It's January 29th. Where did January go? Where did it go? It's gone. I don't know where it went, but we're already 1/12 of the year completed, which is crazy. It's crazy. Welcome to episode 116 of the Driving Forward podcast. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. I got to spend some time this week at McLeod Software and spent some time with Doug Schreier, Clint Hardy, a few days talking about all things. But I want to say thanks. As I was leaving, I got this nice little McLeod die-cast edition. It's one of the good ones. It can go with, nope, this way. Yeah, so I've got a whole bunch of trucks up here and looking forward to setting it down there. But I just unboxed that right before the podcast started. So once again, thanks a lot to McLeod Software for hosting us this week. We loved the chat. So next week, I have on Oliver Jones, the co-founder and CEO of Manifold. Chris, I'm going to guess that it's pronounced Chauso, founder of White Arrow Trucking, and Cole Stevens, the director of strategy and business development for Steven Trucking. We're talking about markets. We're talking about life in the industry, about running companies, et cetera, et cetera. I've known Oliver for some period of time, and he helped put this one together. So did Trey Griggs. Shout out for Trey Griggs. He helped coordinate it as well. So looking forward to this panel. Mostly market driven. So if you're wanting to hear about market and the trials and tribulations of the industry right now, join us next week. Manifest is upon us. We were talking about Manifest 6-8 months ago, and now here it is. So it's hard to believe that we're finally here. It's February 9th through 11th at the Venetian Resort and Casino. We're expecting 7,000 innovative people this year, including 2,000 shippers, 1,500 startups and investors, and 400 speakers that represent 60 countries. If you'd like to join, it's not too late. You can use our discount code and let us know if we'll be seeing you there. That's manifestvegas.com/freight movement. You'll save $200. After the opening session of Manifest on Monday evening, come join us and experience the $1 Million Trucker Bar presented by Venture 53. And it's a freight movement experience. We've spent a ton of time. The planning for this started in August, so we're super excited about bringing this one forward. There's a lot of detail into this one. It's not your normal cocktail hour. The $1 Million Trucker Bar is brought to you once again by Venture 53. And it's at 1923 Prohibition Bar on Monday. It's going to have some speakeasy vibes, real people. We're going to have a live DJ, a photo booth, a bunch of people walking around taking pictures on top of that, and a VIP entrance for ones who snag VIP tickets. And that includes the ice bar below 1923 at the Venetian. The ice bar is also open for everyone that's part of this event. You do need a ticket. So definitely look for the link that we're dropping in the comments to grab the ticket, but you do need a ticket to come. The ice bar is open from, I think, 8 to 10 p.m. for anyone and everyone. So thanks once again to Venture 53 as our title sponsor, with Clio, Journey, EBE, GLCS, and Virago Marketing also helping to bring this one together. And be sure to grab that ticket on Eventbrite. Following next week's podcast, we'll be at Manifest, and we're going to run a podcast that week. We don't know if we're running it live or if we're going to do some recordings. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a lot of content, just like it was last year. We kind of kicked something out here and there. So we'll probably end up with winging it. I think that's probably the best way of saying it. So Looking forward to that event in general. I'm actually hanging around a few days after the conference as well, just to wind down, because it's a monster of an event. Our event Monday evening there, the $1 Million Trucker Bar, we're expecting to have 500 people at, and we're about 400 signed up right now. So should be a great event. If you've been in trucking for more than 5 minutes, you already know that the freight market doesn't necessarily reward effort. It rewards execution. When the cycle turns, when volumes get weird, rates get tight, and everyone starts feeling the pressure, your business doesn't rise to your ambition, it falls to your discipline. And here's the part people don't really talk about. It hits different when you're running a family company, because it's not just a P&L, it's a last name. It's a reputation built over decades, over generations. It's Thanksgiving dinner sitting right next to Monday morning decisions. And that's what we're going to get into today. I've got Mike McDonough with me, someone who lives from the inside of this scenario. We're talking freight market realities, what it takes to lead through uncertainty, and how you manage growth, culture, and accountability when the business is personal. So whether you're a carrier trying to stay profitable, a broker trying to stay relevant, or a shipper trying to keep service consistent, this episode is about making the moves that matter. Well, Mike, let's bring him on. Welcome to the show.
Hey Nate, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. I don't get to see you enough. So
yeah, we definitely need to make more time for that. So
yeah, absolutely. You drive past where I live frequently, almost, well, a couple times a week, I imagine.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. That's
I love the intro. That's I love the Monday morning next to Thanksgiving dinner, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there.
absolutely. I mean, I've lived that reality myself in one way, shape, or form, and I know what it's like. So Mike, you said you've been born into this industry, and you've been on the show once before, but you were on a panel, so we didn't really get to go into your history. So where do you come from? How did you get in the industry, and what's holding you in it?
Well, I don't know if I need to get into the science or biology of it, but
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I don't need that part.
I do think, my grandparents in 1961 founded their company. And if we're living proof of anything, it's that we're Irish and Catholic. So they had 7 kids that they gifted the business to equally. And I believe if you go to the grandkids, there's somewhere in the 41, 42, and continually growing, right? So we'll just say the bottom of the pyramid is quite heavy, right?
Sure.
As you go down the generational tree. So when I was a kid, most people took their kids to daycare. Mom and dad took me to work. And I think that was the same for them. Mom and dad took them to work. So when I was 4 or 5 years old, I would hear the phone answered at the business McDonough Truck Line. Logically, I would think that that's our last name. So I used to introduce myself to people, adults, as Michael McDonough Truck Line. So literally, I think if you look at that and go, how is somebody born into it? I think you just look at it right there. Our business is really become, in essence, like a part of our being, right? It's a part of our definition. And that's not just us. That's any legacy business, any legacy family business. The job they do, the work they do, becomes a part of who they are. And I truly think that when you have a value like that, or a service like that you put so much focus on, and it does become a part of you, I think that really puts the cap on being born into whatever it is you're doing.
No, so a couple of things. The job you do becomes a part of who you are, and I just kind of jotted that one down. Um, I think that's everyone, right? Everyone that's built a career in an industry feels that way, and it hits a little harder when you have a family. Once again, as I said earlier, the Thanksgiving turns into Monday morning discussions or whatever. However, I said that, but it sort of doubles down in a scenario when you're leading a company that's staffed by a significant number of family members, or they're involved in it, and everything that you do not only impacts you. So as a leader of a company of several companies, um, I certainly think that's a part of who I am. But when you have multiple family members, it's a part of who your family is.
Oh yeah,
And it
yeah,
impacts
absolutely.
everyone everywhere. So
Yeah, it's very much clan mentality at that point when there's
yeah,
multiple people involved, right? What's good for the clan, right?
right. So there's a lot of customers that we work with that have a lot of people involved in their organizations and a lot of family involved in their organizations. Sometimes that they're not necessarily in the day to day, but it definitely adds a different dynamic to it, because you have to be able to show up at family functions and not want to throw down. So
Yeah. I mean, that's spot on. I think we've been fortunate. We really had a good example in our founders, my grandparents, of just how to navigate that complexity of family. Maybe not always the best all the time, but in the long run, things tend to work out. Like I said, we're going to be celebrating our 65th year, and I look back to like what we're doing and how things are going. I think a big key to that success is, or that 65-year longevity, is the ability to not make a small thing bigger than it is, and not make a big thing smaller than it is too, right?
right.
There's a fine balance between A and B, and handling those items and making sure that we're good to go, from the standpoint of what we're doing,
Yeah, I follow that 100%. So 1961,
Yeah.
is that what it was? So 65
1961.
years. Yeah. So what do you say is one or a couple of principles, but if you can answer this with one primary principle that's kept the company healthy throughout all the cycles and all the generations?
I think it's the commitment to family, and when I say family, I mean family from an aspect of, we have, our drivers are part of our family, our clients are part of our family. Our motto is large enough to serve, small enough to care. And I think if you're just going to one word that, it's family, right? Everyone in this tree with us is family. And the commitment it takes to stay healthy in family is the commitment that we give to our clients, our employees, our own family members, our vendors, right on down the line. This industry is full of ups and downs. And I think the ability to work through hard times is to have a complete recognition of, would you do family that way? And if you can commit to that, generally people will figure it out with you and work with you.
No, that's a great answer. What do you say the best decision for your family was, and then also what's the toughest one over your involvement or even longer?
Gosh, that's as we're still going, I think there's still so much to be written. Every day, what's going to be that next great decision? You know, um, I would say, one of the decisions that I'll applaud of my grandfather. We'll go back to the days of regulation. Um, when he first got going, he went and got his authority by county versus city, and county superseded city. So he had, even though other trucking companies had the authority for city routes, he had the county route, and he was able to simultaneously get his name out there in somebody else's area because he had county authority. And so I would say that recognition in the late 70s, early 80s was a strong recognition just to get our branding out there. My grandfather would be upset if I didn't mention our St. Patrick's Day cookies.
Okay.
The Irish name of McDonough, and a lot of our clients. I don't know if any of them are watching, but we used to deliver a dozen cookies to our clients, whoever ordered on St. Patrick's Day. I think our largest order was something like 10,000 dozen cookies that we
Holy
delivered,
man.
that we delivered with our routes, with our trucks throughout our LTL routes. And back when you really didn't have data in the 80s, we had a load sheet, that people would handwrite orders on the load sheets by area. We have historical ones where March 16th maybe had 100 pickups on it. March 17th had 400 pickups on it, and March 18th had 70 pickups on it. So you can see the impact of the cookies, as far back to the 80s. Now COVID kind of killed that, because during COVID, nobody wanted to get food, especially food that you would share, as in a dozen cookies, delivered to the doorstep to be left on the break room table, so to speak.
Your wife is saying favorite day of the year.
So. Oh yeah. Cookie day is a good day. A lot of people knew it. I mean, as a kid, we brought cookies to school. We had cookies for days around St. Patrick's Day. As far as tough decisions, I would say, that there were times that we probably could have shut our doors, right? And we made the decision to keep going. And for our owners, I think the tough decision to do that is just the personal financial impact on them. But I think when we go back to that conversation about family, I think there's a sense of duty from our owners to our community, to those we serve, to those who work for us, to say they're part of family. We're going to make sure this doesn't fail. And that can be really hard, really tough.
No, I agree. So I always try to pick like a word of the year, and I haven't really announced what my word this year is, but last year it was tenacity. And actually, I think the year before it was tenacity as well. But this year is going to be different, and I'll talk about that later. But trucking companies, logistics companies, but especially trucking companies, have a level of tenacity that I think most businesses don't have. And they will continue to swing and go until sometimes they shouldn't, and then sometimes it works out. So, there's a market shift over, our careers, and I got a couple of years on you, but not that many, but over our careers that, we've seen a lot of ups and downs, and it can be difficult. So that mentality of the mid-market and small market truck lines of just, we're sticking in it and we're going to find a way, and we're going to build ourselves to where we have the ability to extend further than what most people think we can. because we've made good decisions, and which are tough. Sometimes it means you're not going to have all the capital that you have, but you're paying down debt. And in a bad market, in a down market, having reduced your debt in a good market gives you a lever that companies sometimes don't have, and
Yeah.
that's where you get into the tenacity. How are we going to get through it and whatnot? So I kind of equate that term to you guys as well.
Yeah, that's
Travis
great.
Travis Rosenko put out a pretty big comment. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll leave it up. Um, the last two sentences, though, authority is built over decades, but lost in one Russian doll scheme. I don't have that word. I think Travis sent in a comment last week, and I knew the word, but this one you got me on, man. Um, how do you protect achievements of the generations these days?
Boy, that's we had our own little fraud thing, back in 24 that it was challenging for us. Not from a standpoint that we were really impacted as far as financial loss or financial gain, but it took up a lot of time and a lot of attention and a lot of involvement. And so as we talk about, commitment and service and all of those things, anything that distracts from that is, a problem, right? Because if you're trying to serve someone with the utmost attention and now you're distracted, hey, your ability to serve has been compromised. Um, so I look at that question and I say, what we've done is we really have drawn inward. We've intentionally reduced our digital footprint. We've reduced our social media space. We're engaging a lot on phone interaction, human interaction where we can with clients that will take us. Instead of doing team meetings or Zoom meetings, we're requesting, hey, let's have a sit down and do these on-site face-to-face meetings. Much like I would just call it the days pre-internet. And what we're finding is that there's a genuine sincerity in those moments where people truly come to understand who we are and what we mean by when we say serve. And then on top of that, it allows our clients and our teams to form their own opinion of us on site, not something they read or were told, but founded in their own belief through their own interaction with us. And we feel that that is so much more powerful than a recommendation or a blurb or a 5-star review or whatever it might be that really drove SEO stuff before. We're finding that word of mouth is starting to matter almost more than some of these things.
In some cases, you end up with information overload. You're getting all
Yeah.
kinds of emails. You're getting pinged from every direction. I think there's it's certainly a business choice, but I completely agree that the in-person meetings matter. And last year I did as many of them as I could. This year it'll probably be the same, going out to existing customers, prospects, etc. Which is something that I think we all slowed down with in the past 5 years, but I think it's now picking back up. The in-person discussions are important. The relationships are important, and not just staring at someone through a camera. So I don't care what industry you're in. I feel like if you have the ability to reach out and meet your customer face to face, or anyone you have a relationship in or with, that's extremely, extremely valuable and will pay dividends.
I agree. There's a spark in a handshake. There's a
Yeah,
connection to the soul of a person in a handshake, and people know when they get a really good one. Hey, this is a good one here.
yeah, absolutely. I like that spark in a handshake. Um, so I'm going to finish with this question before we go to break. What did what did you have to, and then once we come back from break, I think we'll go into market and costs and all the stuff that we love talking about too. So,
Yeah.
but we'll kind of leave the family side behind, at least maybe until the very end. What have you had to learn the hard way when you stepped into a leadership role at your family company? What comes to mind when I ask that question?
Even though I'm the leader, I'm still the baby. I happen to be the oldest of the third generation. I'm technically not an owner. My dad and his siblings are the owner. I'm the COO today, and they've sort of stepped away from the operations and they let me handle that. But I'm still a generation below them. I'm still my father's son. I'm still my uncle's and aunt's nephew. And how I communicate and how I carry myself, I need to be respectful in how I do that. Respect earned is respect given, I think. And I don't necessarily want to say it was a hard lesson to learn, but it's a lesson that's ever growing. On any given day, I think I always just need to remember to humble myself and say, I would not be here if not for them. And they would not be here if not for our grandparents, my grandparents, their parents. And oftentimes that's really hard to humble yourself and just sit down and say those words before you present the next idea or the next decision or next whatever, because oftentimes when we're making that call, we say, this is what we're doing, and we're just going. But I do think if there's an art to presenting that compassionately and still respecting the familial boundaries and making sure that both family and business are good. And boy, if I could write a book on how to do that, I'd be a millionaire or probably a billionaire. But I do think it's something that on every day it changes on any given thing, because you don't know, hey, was my dad in a good mood today? Was his beer sour in Mexico last night? I don't know, so I don't know what's going to get him going on any given day. But I do know if I humble myself before I present what I'm doing, that it's always received much better.
That's a valid point. I'm going to extend that to beyond family companies. I think putting yourself in the perspective of those that you're about to discuss something with and understanding what their point of view is to the best of your or lack of knowledge for that point of view can sometimes change the way you work with others, and listening before you speak sometimes is going to set the tone of the discussion you're about to have. So, but certainly there's a complication on or not a complication, added complexity on the family side. So you know each other all extremely well. And to your point, you're the young one. So absolutely. So I think we'll take our break now, and we'll come back and start talking some markets and different signals you're looking for and costing and whatnot. See what you guys are doing there. But we'll be back in about a minute and a half.
If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the time-critical world of trucking and logistics, every minute counts. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT and technology services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep trucking and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them with our industry connections and proactive approach. We keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
All right. The one thing I didn't talk about in the opening session was I'm going to hit this before we start jumping in because I got a couple of comments I need to state. So if you are joining Manifest, be sure that you come to Robert Bain's panel. And Natalia, I'm staring at that, but if you want to click the button, feel free. Or I can. Let me pull it up. Oh, there we go. Walking through a supply chain transformation. And what does it take? We have John Bauer, who's the CEO of Standard Holding Corporation, Douglas Cantriell, who's the head of North American Transportation and Modernization at Ford, Daryl Glass, the Senior VP of Fulfillment and Last Mile from Target, and Miguel Silva, the Group Chief Supply Chain Officer at Dr. Max BDC. So that's Tuesday, February 10th. At 3:20 p.m. at Manifest. So, swing on in, chat about that one. Last year we talked about cross borders, or Bain talked about cross border. This year's a little different. In addition to that, our upcoming events. Why don't we flip to that one? Upcoming events, we have Manifest, of course, and then following that. We'll be at TCA the end of February. We have a booth there. They've actually asked us to bring Driving Forward, so we have another extension to our booth, and we'll be doing some interviews and discussions with members. They're not sure if we're going to make it live because internet's always a thing at these conferences, and sometimes we don't get enough bandwidth. So following that, myself, so at TCA it'll be myself, Susan Mayo, Mike Solars, and Missy Hetland. At TMC in Nashville, it'll be Susan and myself. And Mid-America Truck Show, I'll have a panel I'm on. I think Robert Bain and I will be attending that. But we're not going to do a booth, I don't think, this year. TBD. So following that, we're at Decision 44, NTTC, Broker Carrier Summit, ATA Midyear, and that takes us through the middle of May. There's a lot more coming after that. So if you're going to any of those sessions, any of those conferences, summits, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you there. All right, Mike. When you look at the freight market right now, what singles are you trusting the most, and what are you kind of monitoring on a day-to-day basis?
Gosh,
that might be your component of the freight market, whatever you do to run your business.
Yeah. I think, we're on load boards. We do quite a bit with C.H. Robinson. So we're on Navisphere. We're on highway. And the one thing that we're trying to do is really get a triangulation of rates between all three places, right? Because Navisphere might say one thing, highway might say another, DAT might say another. And we're trying to indicate, with the spot market, how are things moving? Because a lot of what we do is dedicated, and spot market, even though dedicated is kind of its own beast, spot market does come into play as far as the overall economy, the overall flavor or discussion of trucking. I'll just, put this term out there. The spot market is bad. So when you talk trucking with folks, the very easy thing to say is trucking's really bad right now, right? So,
right.
We have a pulse on what we would call spot market, specifically in different sects, right? What is highway saying? What is C.H. Robinson saying? What is truck stop saying? What is DAT saying? Because each one of those in their own rights is its own kind of marketplace. And one might be up, the other might be holding. It's like Dow Jones versus NASDAQ versus this, right? So from our standpoint, we try and get a sense, if we see all four of them moving in the same direction, well, then there's some truth to what's happening there. If one is moving in an anomaly that the other one isn't, and say that's maybe Navisphere, well, C.H. Robinson at that point has a customer they want to serve, right? So from that standpoint, we're trying to keep an index on are things moving the same way everywhere, or is it just a one-off, right? As far as our trucks, it's a lot of out and back type work that we're doing. So really, we're kind of in a small sliver of segment where we work with the same people, the same clients, the same, we'll call them one-off brokers when our client doesn't have capacity. We work with the same people pretty much all the time. So in order for us to get any movement on rates with those people, we have to have a context to bring to them and say, this is what we're seeing. Oftentimes those places are providing context for us when we're having those discussions, as well as, just other information sources out there, such as FreightWaves, such as, other sites that we're keeping eyes on, keeping track of what's moving, tuning into your podcast, getting information from there, having discussions with those around us. What are you guys seeing? Part of being a Minnesota carrier and Minnesota Trucking Association is, gosh, I swear we're all related. It's the most incestuous industry that's ever been around. Everybody knows somebody who's worked at somebody who's had somebody that's worked for them, and paths cross and people talk, and we rely on that talk to say, hey, we're good to go with this. This is solid information, or that's a tall tale. That's a one-off. That's kind of how we keep our eye on what's happening. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any advice for us that we should be doing better?
Well, not knowing exactly in detail, but I mean, watching. So depending upon what your percentage of spot market freight is, that's the effort level that you put towards it, right? So if you're hauling 50% spot market, you probably want to put some effort into the buy side, the carrier buy side of the spot market. And there's tools that can help you do that. So actually tune in next week. So Oliver's, the product manifold would be a good one to learn about. But there's other products out there too. But if you're only doing 5, 10, 15% of your freight on spot market, and being a dedicated carrier, you have different rules that you operate by typically than a regular route over the road fleet. So but there are some advanced tools that let you see the buy side. Truckstop has one, for example. You mentioned Truckstop. So there are places that have the buy side available to you and can help. But to your point, they are different indexes. And, you look at the evolution of when I first met you not 20 years ago, but close to that.
17?
Probably, yeah. No one was hauling. The spot market itself did not represent the footprint that it does today. We didn't have that 17 years ago. It was much, much, much smaller. Maybe 10%, 8%, 10% of the freight was moving on the spot market. Now it's much more. So you kind of have to account for that. So there's potentially other solutions that are out there, but honestly, there's a lot of questions that go around it. So when you think about, I actually consider the market, most of our customers are hauling a high amount of contract freight. On the asset side, for sure. On the broker side, a lot of brokers right now are looking at moving away from what non-contract freight and trying to grab some contract freight to help with the market shift. So you see some of that happening right now. But when you think about contract versus spot, where do you kind of draw the line between protecting a relationship or protecting a margin? So what I mean by that is, we're in a spot where sometimes that rate can be too low. This could be spot or contract. It's obviously more complex on the contract side. But sometimes you have to look at business and say, listen, we need an increase here, or we can't do it anymore. Or vice versa, in a good market, going to a bad market, that customer comes calling on you and says, you have to come down in rate. So what's your differentiator? What do you think of when you look at that about, you have the relationship with the customer, but it's now financially driven and you have to protect your margin. So what thoughts does that bring to you?
Well, it brings me back to the last time I was on your panel, and we had talked about seeing the highest highs and the lowest lows within that short window of time. And I believe my advice was try not to make all your money back in one transaction, right? And so for us, I look at our 65-year longevity, and I'll tell you that there's plenty of times that we've left meat on the bone when it comes to negotiating with a client of ours. But then the flip side of that is, like you've talked, they're far less apt. They know the market, they know the industry, they know what they're up against. There's far less times that they come to us and move us and say, hey, we need a decrease. I look at that scenario, with me being diabetic, I'm really partial to what we would call rolling hills instead of peaks and valleys. When you just talk about like glucose care or blood sugar care, the peaks and valleys are where danger is, right? And so if you can just get into a nice rolling hill of stuff, I think that makes a long, healthy life a lot easier. I didn't have that correlation of my own diabetic health and freight rates come together until just now as we were talking about this. but I do think like it's been a big part of our long successes. We've never been a carrier that's ever really gone to somebody and really asked for anything more than 3 to 5% in an increase. But then on the flip side of that, I don't think we've really ever seen decreases, or if we have, it's only been like 1 or 2%. And so I think when you look at that and then you compare it with understanding your costs and understanding how you operate and understanding what you do so well that you keep your eye on the prize and you just keep your eye on, we're going to stay in the black. We're going to stay in the black. We're going to stay in the black. It's not always easy to do that, but I think when you have A and B together, it allows you to be very successful and be around for a long time. As you said, when you're up, you pay down debt. When you're down, now you've got levers that you can pull to maybe get new debt to carry you through.
Right. Yeah. Eliminating the peaks and valleys and having rolling hills. That's a philosophy that I've used for many, many years. But to do that, you have to have a good measure of your organization and understand what a peak is and what a valley is. So what are the non-negotiable numbers that you watch daily, weekly, monthly, that kind of drive that standardization to get away from the peaks and valleys?
Well, I believe I learned this term from you when I was a client of yours, but instead of just measuring revenue, we measure velocity, revenue over time, right? Our drivers are paid hourly. Our biggest cost sector is salary, wage. And so our biggest thing is how much are we making to how much are we paying? And we have that down to the daily number. And that's what we keep our eye on. We review it every Friday. What days were good in the week? Why weren't they good in the week? Let's talk about that. Let's fix it immediately so next week can be a better week. It's not about stringing together wins as much as it is preventing losses from being strung together. Because you're going to have wins and losses in this industry. You just don't want to have 3 losses in a row. I was listening to guys talk about professional football and the impact of a loss when there's only 17 weeks in a season. You compare that to baseball that has 172 or 162 games. A team might go on a 10-game losing streak in baseball, and you go, wow, that was awful. That's like 1 loss in football, right? So in football, when you have 2 or 3 losses strung together, it's like it's the worst of the worst. It's like a 30-game losing streak in baseball. And so I look at that and I go, same kind of semantic here with our trucking operations. If we can limit it to, we only lost 1 day in the week versus we lost 2 days in the week. It's, oftentimes a 5 to 6 day work week. In a reality, when a driver, yes, they have a 7-day duty, most businesses work 5 days. There's not always 24/7 receivers and shippers. And so when you talk about it, that there's really 5 business days in operation, you want to be winning at least 3 of those days, and
Right.
that's kind of how we look at it. Say, let's make sure we're not losing more than 2.
Well, yeah, you net out the one. So,
Yeah,
but
right,
I would
right.
say, if you can do it, you want to not only prevent the losses, right? But in this industry, we just know we're going to lose from time to time, right? So how do you reduce? I mean, not how, but I would say when you know you're going to lose, prevent or close that loss to the least impact as possible. So, and the only way you do that is being aware of your key metrics, the KPIs that drive your business, and the meaningful metrics that drive your business. So, knowing that payroll is always going to be X%, and if we're under X%, we're fine. But that also then applies to how many trucks do you have, and are all of them running, and you have some utilization that runs along with that. But the you're going to lose. How do you either get done with that as fast as possible and brush it off and go on to the next one, or how do you eliminate the cost of or the substantial loss and make it only a little loss? Because you can lose 10 times in a row, not that you want to, very small amount, and then have one big win and still come out okay. That doesn't eliminate a peak and valley though. So that's not what you do. You always want to win as much as you can and then lose as little as possible, even when you are going to lose. So
Correct.
So in a soft market, and we've been in a soft market for a long time now, and I know you kind of operate a little differently than others, but when times are tough, what's the first things that you start looking at to control costs?
For us, we really look at driver hours and we look for anomalies in those hours. Generally all of our guys work anywhere from 50 to 55 hours every week. They're home pretty much daily, or for our extended guys that are doing their dedicated long runs, they're home 3 days on the weekend. And they're out 5, 4.5, 5. So we look at those bursts and we say, this driver this week on average is 50. If we see a 60 out there, what happened? If we see a 40 in there, what happened? Right? We're trying to identify the anomalies and just say, tell the story. Tell the story. Generally, if you've worked in this industry long enough, nobody wants to lose, and everybody's going to make, for the most part, pretty good decisions. It's just, do they have the data to explain why the story happened, right? I always talk about companies that have it's been 0 days since, we had an injury or whatever. That's great data, right? That's great information. So I always say that, the person who got hurt, they know right away why they got hurt or what happened, what they were doing right, because they have this awareness of what they're doing. And so we believe in sharing that information as much as we can with our people so that they can, on the day they didn't win, they're apt to tell you why right away. And you don't have to go hunting for the story as much as they're willing to tell you the reasons why they made the decisions they made, or the story behind why the events laid out as they did. And I find that in an environment like that, it's much easier to proactively approach a client, proactively approach a government official, proactively approach whoever it may be that you need to approach to say, hey, something needs to change here, versus year end at the end of the books and you're going, oh boy, what happened? How do we change this? it's too late at that point. So, from our standpoint, just tell the story and let's go. But our role is to give the storytelling tools to the people that are writing the story.
No, fair point. Fair point. So a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap this hour up. It always goes by super fast. So you're self-described data nerd. What data do you wish every carrier had that was clean and usable? And what are most people tracking wrong?
Oh boy. I mean, you just don't, there's so much here that you can do that. To me, because cash is king, I think completion to invoice is the piece that people need to track more of. And I think that it's also the piece that gets lost, because we can get an invoice out, but was that invoice correct? And then were there 0 rebills, right? So I think that the total data sculpture needs to be completion to invoice without a rebill within 5 days. And I look at that and go, if you can nail that down, and for us, Nate, this is going to blow your mind. We are not all the time. On average, we are 15 minutes invoice from completion. On average,
no, that doesn't blow my mind. So that's actually not that abnormal these days. I'm going to say it is abnormal, but it's something that a lot of people are hunting. So good for you that you're there.
Yeah. And that's on average. The number that speaks to me is we have a 30% billing rate of within 2 minutes of delivery. And that to me is the one that I just go, wow, because I look at the history of the industry and where we were. That was reserved for the largest of the large carriers with the deepest pocketbooks, with the utmost technology spend. And now it's attainable to mom and pop shops if they just commit to doing it.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to achieve it, and that it's different answers in different sectors of the industry. But it does start with a solid defined process. And I've said this many, many times that trucking's largest issue is cash flow.
Yeah.
You may not have a profit problem, you may have a cash flow problem. And cash flow can be meant, and it also has a debt problem on top of that too. But if you control cash flow, you control debt, and you're a good operator, you're going to be doing all right. But there are plenty of operators out there that are taking 30 plus days to invoice loads. The other metric that we started putting in, so not only delivery to billing, but we put in a middle metric of reception. So when you receive the documents, because some organizations have huge piles of paperwork laying around, and they may receive or they may have a digital queue, right? A digital queue is the first thing, but you'd be surprised how many actually still have a pile of paperwork that they're invoicing off of. So that reception of the bill of lading or whatever documents are required to invoice, to how fast you're invoicing from there, because that's just DSO reduction, and that's going to help cash flow. So which can improve debt, especially if you're looking at a 30-day injection. That's a whole month of revenue if that's your average. If you can reduce that down to where you're billing out in 2 minutes, that's a big operating loan. That is your operating loan that you're carrying in just a receivable that hasn't been billed yet.
Yeah,
it's not even technically a receivable. So, well, fair enough. No, that's a great. I'm 100% behind you on that one. So.
Are we gonna call you like the Justin Jefferson of reception of document reception here?
Yeah, fair enough. So
I love that. I love that one. I guess how our process works is
spoken like a true Viking.
Yeah. Once it hits the queue, that's the immediacy that we're invoicing, right? So we have a workflow that when something lands in the queue, it's hey, invoicer, there's something in the queue, go take care of it. So we're measuring, I guess, from reception to completion on
Okay.
that. But I guess I didn't put two and two together that you could have reception, then a delay in between
Right.
completion and billing.
You shouldn't.
That's great.
Yeah, you shouldn't, but it happens. If you go back through the manual processes of getting the trip pack in and opening the trip pack, and then paperwork sits there or whatever the case may be before you had in some sort of image capture. But there's still companies using trip pack on and moving physical paper around. So that's these processes still do exist, right, wrong, or indifferent. So last question, looking 12 to 24 months out, what advice would you give to another next gen leader running a family carrier? And that's, looking over the next 12 to 24 months, and all the market conditions and everything like that.
Hold on to your butts. No, I kind of say that facetiously, but I think if we look at history, specifically since 2020 to now, and just the we'll call it the veracity of change is inevitable. Change is going to happen, but the veracity of the change that we've experienced in that time. I think if you ask anyone in this industry, you would hear words like, I would have never expected it to be like this. And when I look at that, I just go, change is going to come, and change comes hard. So, I would say this, keep both feet on the ground, be ready to put the work in, stay humble, stay true to yourself, stay true to those you serve, and you'll be like us, a survivor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's great, and that tracks with the large enough to serve and small enough to care. I like that motto. So, Mike, I know we're coming up on time, so I know I'll be seeing you at the Minnesota Trucking Association annual conference end of July, which that's in Brainerd this year. And we'll be sure to try to, assuming the weather cooperates, we'll get you out on the boat. So that's my lake. So
yeah, let's go. Perfect.
Yeah, and I know you love doing some fishing too. So hopefully can tool you around. So how can people find you if they're looking to open a dialogue?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Michael D. McDonough on LinkedIn. You can find us at our website, McDonoughTruckline.com. Our general contact is there. If you want to get crazy and throw my cell phone out there, you can throw my cell phone out there. I'm always open to taking a call.
I leave that up to you. I'm not going to just put it out there. So
we'll see.
Fair enough. So if you want that, reach out to Mike via LinkedIn and then go from there. So
perfect.
But Mike, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great getting caught up a little bit. Let's try to get together before July. Can meet you somewhere at some time. So love to do so. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving all the insight. I appreciate it.
Sounds great, Nate. Thank you for having me. You do a great job with these. I just love them.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, so that's a wrap for today. If there's one takeaway, it's this: the freight market's always going to test you, but it doesn't get to define you. What defines you is how you operate when the noise gets loud and the margin gets thin. When it would be easier to chase shortcuts than stay disciplined. Real leaders don't get exposed in the good times; they get revealed in the hard ones. So wherever you sit in the industry, carrier, broker, or shipper, take something you heard today and apply it to your organization or yourself fast. Tighten one process up, strengthen one relationship, and get ruthless about what's not working. And protect the culture you're building, because that's the part nobody can buy from you. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation.